everyone, it's Clarice. So there's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. So I thought, why not turn on the camera, ramble about it for a while, and somehow try to edit it into making sense. I've always been a reader, but obviously over time the type of books that I read changed a lot. When I was younger, of course, I read Dr. Seuss and things, and then later on I started to read Babysitter's Club and Mary-Kate and Ashley a lot. But I think the books that really got me into young adult fiction, like most other people, were the Twilight books. And from that point onward, I read almost exclusively young adult books for years without even realizing it. I didn't even know young adult was a thing, and yet that was all I read. But almost a year ago, I discovered BookTube, and I think that was when my reading habits and tastes in general changed the most. I could probably make an entire video about how BookTube has affected my reading, but one of the main things that I think it changed was my taste in books. Weirdly, even though BookTube is actually a community filled mostly with people that read almost exclusively young adult fiction, I think after discovering BookTube was when I started to grow out of young adult. So I actually don't think you can grow out of young adult per se. I think you can grow out of some of the normal types of characters and plots and tropes that you see in young adult. When I started watching BookTube and reading a lot, I discovered some of the books that I now consider to be among my favorites. The first of which is probably Ready Player One, and I love Ready Player One. And I think I will always love Ready Player One, and I will always recommend Ready Player One. But the first series that I got so obsessed with since I started watching BookTube, I think, was the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I read all the books out in that series, all the 4 books that are currently out, within like a month. I read the first 2 books, and then the prequel novellas, and then soon after that, the 3rd book came out. And so, yeah, I basically read the first 4 books all in a month, and I love that series. I was obsessed with it at the time. I feel like Throne of Glass is the book that really opened me up to high fantasy, I think, because before that, I had never really read any high fantasy that I really enjoyed. But Throne of Glass was the first of those books, and after that, I wanted to read more high fantasy. So I read the Mistborn trilogy. I think Mistborn is kind of what started my shift from liking young adult fiction to more adult fiction. And then I discovered more books and read more books, some of which I liked and some of which I disliked. If you're not new to this channel, you probably know some of the books that I didn't really like personally. And among those books are 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray, the 2nd and 3rd books in the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare, Incarnate by Jodi Meadows, and Reality Boy by A.S. King. And I've always said that I don't think these are bad books. I just don't think that they're within my taste. I don't think it's possible to be completely objective in rating books. I mean, you can review books and tell people how you felt, but I don't think there can ever be a really objective scale to how you rate books. I used to try to do that, but I eventually accepted that you can't do that, and I basically just rate books and how I feel about them. And if I don't like a book, I'm not gonna give it higher than 2 stars. The opinions people have in books, not like their thoughts, but more on like their overall rating or ranking of books, has just as much to do with the reader as it does the book itself. It's not like I dislike these books because they sucked, because a lot of them had their merits. It's just that I personally could not say that I liked it, and all for very similar reasons. I didn't like how romance overshadowed the other aspects of the book. I also really don't appreciate angsty teenagers in most cases unless it's done very well. And I also don't like it when characters are being kind of petty. And those are things that I found in these books that made me dislike them. When I thought about it, these were aspects of books that I didn't used to hate so much. Some of the books that I would consider among my favorites had some of these things. You know, like The Hunger Games had a love triangle. Throne of Glass has a love triangle. It has angst. It has a lot of the things that I really didn't enjoy in books, and it made me think. It made me really worry that maybe if I read the Throne of Glass series or the Hunger Games again, maybe I wouldn't like them as much as I had liked them before. And I'm kind of worried because the next Throne of Glass book, Queen of Shadows, is coming out in a few months, and I'm so afraid when I read it, I'm gonna hate it. And I know there's nothing wrong with changing your taste in books. Maybe it's just the obsessive compulsive side of me that's making me feel so bothered by the fact that some of the ratings of books that I may have on Goodreads probably aren't accurate to how I may feel about those books now, and that I may have books on my favorite shelf and books that I would consider some of my favorites that don't actually belong there. I have such a huge urge to just try to reread all the books that I read before my booktube days and before my taste in books has changed, and see if the ratings still hold or if I have to change them. But I know I can't do that because there are all these other books that I want to read, and I don't have enough time to do that. At the very least, I want to be able to read some of the books that I at least considered my favorites and see if I could still consider them my favorites. It was just bothering me so much that my memories of these books and where I'd rank them and where I'd place them may be wrong. It's kind of weird because it doesn't make sense for that to be bothering me. And maybe just because my taste on books now and the fact that I may not like these books the same way now as I did before doesn't necessarily make my ratings of them wrong. Again, I feel that the ratings of books depend just as much on the reader as they do the books themselves. Maybe these ratings just belong to the reader that I was before and not to the reader that I am now. And maybe there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not really sure what the point of this video is. I just wanted to talk. Have you ever felt the same way? Do you maybe worry that your thoughts on books and old favorites may not actually be your favorites anymore? How has your taste in books changed over time? Anyway, please like, comment, and subscribe. Especially comment if you have thoughts because I'd love to hear them. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!